Welcome back, everybody. I hope you all are doing good. Today I'm going to review the Flameweld 150D MIG stick combo. This is a 110 220 volt welder, and at the time of purchase I got it for $179 on Amazon. Alright, starting out on the front of the welder, we'll find some of our common stuff like our 2T and 4T selector switch, our MIG and stick selector switch. We'll also find the amperage / wire speed control and the display for that control, and our voltage control along with the display for that. We have an over temp indicator light at the top here. We have our MIG lead connector, our positive connector, our negative connector, and the polarity connector for the MIG lead. Depending on if you plug this into the positive or the negative, that's going to change what polarity your electrode is. So down here is DC electrode positive. We take it out, plug it in at the top, and now we're running in DC electrode negative out of the MIG. Alright, taking a look at the side, we've got a good metal handle at the top, plastic mounting hardware, but it's pretty solid. We've got two plastic hinges at the top. They seem to be pretty adequate with metal pins, and we got our two plastic latches down here at the bottom. They are spring loaded. Put your fingers in, pull up, door opens up. Alright, taking a look on the inside, we've got our spool holder here with a plastic wing nut that has a metal nut inserted in it. We've got our pressure spring, I've got a pressure plate, and that's really about it. There's another washer here that will go on first before your spool wire goes on. Alright, let's take a look at the wire feed here. First you'll see this little dial. This is a latch for the pressure arm. It's spring loaded. You rotate it to adjust your tension. Just flip it out of the way, and now we can lift up the roller arm. On the front here, we got a little tube that the wire feeds in through, keeping it nice and straight as it goes across the feed wheel. Alright, we're going to take the roller wheel off, so to do that we're going to rotate this captive nut here and slide it off. Set it off to the side. Now we're going to have to flip the arm up and we can pull the wheel out. A little hard to do from the side out of the view of the camera. Let's take a look at the feed wheel real quick. You can see there's two grooves on here, a thicker one and a thinner one. So that's to handle the different ranges of wire sizes that you're going to be running through there. If you're using the Flux core, you're going to be using either 0.03 or 0.035 diameter wire, so you'll be using the larger groove. If you're using hard wire, you might be using like a 0.025, something like that, and you'd be using the smaller groove. Alright, let's put the feed wheel back in. First we're going to start out by lifting up on the pressure arm, and we're going to slide the wheel back onto the shaft with the groove diameter that we're going to use on the outside. Take our captive nut here with this little window on the side of it, and that's going to be facing the back of the welder. Push this in and rotate. And then we're good to go. We'll just drop the pressure arm back in place, flip the latch back up. Now we're ready to close the door and we're good to go. Taking a look at the back side, up here at the top we have our on-off switch. At the bottom we have our 1/4 inch male barbed gas line fitting, and our cooling fan here in the middle. And here's the power cord. Nothing special, about 4 feet long, 10 gauge, seems to be pretty good quality. But what's really nice about this one that the prior two units that I reviewed does not have is that instead of coming with the 15 amp NEMA 515 110 volt plug installed on it, this one has the 30 amp NEMA 1430, which is the 220 volt plug, what you would commonly find on your dryer. Alright, let's take a look at the MIG lead. This is a 10-foot lead with the gun being, the best that I can tell, a clone of the Tweco number 2. That does have a ball and socket connector on the tail bottom end of the gun. It gives it quite a bit more flex and takes a little bit of strain off of the line and the gun itself. Taking the nozzle off is pretty easy. Just rotate it, slide it off. The one that it comes with seems to be pretty good quality. It's pretty heavy. Doesn't seem like it's going to get damaged real easily. To remove the contact tip, we're just going to use the little multi-tool that the welder comes with, put it onto the tip, break it free, unscrew it. This is just the standard Tweco tip. It's the same the Lincoln, Miller, Harbor Freight, you know, whatever. As long as it's the Tweco style, it's going to work. Alright, looking at the end here on the gas diffuser, you can see there's a spring that goes around it. That spring allows rotation of one direction only for the nozzle. If you try to rotate it the other direction, it stops it. So both putting it on and taking it off, you keep your rotation going the same direction. Taking a look at the connector for the MIG lead, you see we've got a couple things going on here. We've got these little spring-loaded pins. Those are the contacts for the trigger on your gun. You got your gas line off to the side, and then this is where your wire feeds in through. This is actually a nut, and we'll take it off, and that is how you replace the liner if your liner goes bad or gets kinked up. So again, using the multi-tool that the welder comes with, we just break the little nut free, unscrew it. Now I'm not going to take the liner out all the way. It's not that it's a pain or that it's hard, it's just that there's no need to. But you can see the style of the connector on the end of this liner is what you're going to find for all of your Tweco style MIG welders. Taking a closer look at the connector, we've got our threaded end that screws onto the welder. We've got a little screw up here that holds the main power wire and everything in place on the inside. A little slight turn of the end cap, and that comes off. And I'll take one of the side panels here off. You'll see the hose that is the power line and the wire feed and the gas all in one, in the main one there. Then off to the side you see the little wires. Those are for the trigger. Let's slide this back in, put the tail cap back on. I don't really like that connection on the tail cap. It's only a slight turn to get it to attach. I might have to put a little piece of electric tape around that or something in the future. Alright, taking a look at the stick lead that comes with the welder. It has a 3/8 pin dent connector, a 6-foot lead, and of course the stinger. This is actually about the best one that I've seen yet with these cheap units. The spring pressure on it is quite heavy. There's hardly no wobble whatsoever in the lever. It does seem to be pretty good quality. Unlike the one that came with the TIG welder, this one definitely won't get thrown out. Alright, here's the ground clamp. No different than the other ones that I've already showed you guys. 3/8 pin dent connector, 6-foot lead. The clamp is stamped out of 1/32 steel with a galvanized finish. It's got the copper strap that connects the jaws on both sides, and the jaws are bolt-on, and the lead bolts on directly to the jaw and is not crimped on. Here's the power adapter. It is reverse of the other units that I've shown before because it has the male 15 amp 110 and the female 30 amp 220. Alright, let's go ahead and hook up the MIG lead. Grab our connector here. There's a key on it, and there's a key in the female socket on the welder, so we want to make sure we have those lined up, which I did not. Here we go. And we'll screw it down, get it in there nice and tight. Alright, let's get some wire installed. So we're going to use the wire that it came with. We need some side snips or hognose pliers to cut the wire. We're going to remove the spool holder wing nut, spring, and pressure plate, leaving the inner plate on. Put the spool of wire on. Make sure I'm going the right direction with it here, and there is a correct direction. Put the pressure plate back on. Right direction as well. There we go. Put the spring on and the wing nut back on. And we're going to tighten this down. We don't want to get it too tight. We want to make sure that that spool of wire can still spin. So I'll give it a couple little spins, adjust the wing nut. Alright, we don't want the wire coming from the top. We want it coming out from the bottom going straight in. From the top it'll put a kink into it, so make sure you're going straight out from the bottom. We're going to pull the wire out. There's a kink in it that we're going to cut out. That's from where it's folded over into the spool. Lift up the pressure plate, slide it into that tube in the rear of the feed mechanism. Once you got it going over the roller wheel, or the feed wheel, we'll push it into the little tube on the front side and feed it in a little bit further, and then you're good to go. It's important to get the pressure set properly by this latch, and if it's too tight it'll crush the wire. If it's too loose it just won't grab it at all. Especially with flux core, if it's too tight it'll crush it, deform it, and it won't feed properly. Just wanted to point out real fast that a couple of the switches on the front are exposed on the back side when you have the side panel open. Alright, time to get some wire fed through. So we're going to turn our wire feed up all the way and pull the trigger, and you're just going to sit there and holding it like that. The wire is going to feed through the lead up into the gun. At a certain point the wire is going to stop feeding. It's going to be hung up in the contact tip, and we'll have to take the contact tip off to let the wire come through. So we'll go back to that included tool, take the contact tip off here, feed the wire through a little bit more, and then slide that contact tip back on, put the nozzle back on, and cut the excess wire off. Make sure you don't over tighten that contact tip when you're putting it on. Alright, before I can start doing some welding, I have to make some adjustments. So we'll go ahead and cover everything on the front of the welder. We've got the 2T and 4T switch. And what that does is, in 2T, when you pull the trigger, the welder's going to weld until you let go of the trigger. So just your normal on-off button like on a drill. In 4T, when you pull that trigger, you let go, and it's going to continue welding until you hit that trigger again. The next switch is our MIG and stick selector, and of course we're MIG welding, so we want to have it in MIG. That's pretty simple. The first dial on the left is the wire speed or amperage control. In MIG mode, this controls our wire speed. In stick mode, this controls the amperage. The next dial over is our voltage. And then of course the display above it shows set voltage. Pretty simple. Like mentioned earlier, the short lead that comes out of the welder is for the polarity of the MIG welder. So right now I have it plugged into the negative plug. That means that I'm going to be welding in DC electrode negative. My ground clamp is plugged into the bottom positive plug, and so the ground clamp will be positive. Alright, here's a few tips that I have for MIG welding with flux core self-shielding wire. It is quite a bit different than welding with shielded gas and solid core wire. If you try to MIG weld with flux core like you would with shielded gas, then you're going to have poor results. It's a little bit more like welding with a stick welder, in the sense that with shielded gas MIG welding, you'll have your nozzle pointed forward and you're pushing the weld. With stick welding, you drag it behind you. And there's some experts out there that say that's the way you gotta weld with the flux core wire. I don't like doing it like that. I find that the weld, it's too easy for the weld to pile up, and not get as good penetration or lay flat, what I like to do is just go straight with it. Don't push, don't drag, you go straight. The other thing is flux core has a lot of spatter and it's really dirty compared to shielded gas, or especially compared to TIG welding. So two things on that is anytime you're doing MIG, shielded gas MIG, flux core MIG, or stick welding, I recommend using the anti-spatter spray. And you spray this on your metal before you go to start welding. This is especially important with the flux core. It produces a lot of spatter. This will help clean it up. The other thing is a wire wheel on your angle grinder. This is a knotted wire wheel. It's a lot more aggressive, eats into the metal a little bit better, holds its shape a little bit better too. Those are like 15, 16 bucks a piece usually. It's what I paid for this one. If you don't have an angle grinder, or you don't have a wire wheel, or you can't afford that, then get you a good high carbon steel wire brush, which you should have that regardless of having a wire wheel on an angle grinder or not. The other thing about flux core welding is that the weld will have slag over the top of it. And you'll have to chip that off before you can go back over it. With shielded gas welding, you make a pass, you can immediately go right back again and make a second pass or your third pass. With flux core, it's just like stick welding. You have to go back and break that slag off that's over the top of the weld before you go back over. If you try to weld back over that, you're going to get porosity all throughout the weld, which will lead to failure of the weld, but also look really, really bad. Today, I've got some coupons here that I just cut with a plasma cutter and cleaned up with a die grinder. And I just took the mill scale off of the ends here where I'm going to be welding, cleaned up the ends here. I'm going to do a butt weld, and then I'll do T-weld, and then I'll probably weld the two pieces together in a vertical weld. So this welder is brand new to me. I've only ran 4 beads on this welder, and I just did that just a few minutes ago. And if I haven't already mentioned it, I'm going to mention it again. With flux core welding, you have to weld DC electrode negative. When you're shielded gas MIG welding, you weld DC electrode positive. If you try to do that with a flux core, it's going to be just spattering like crazy. You're going to have a lot of what looks like porosity in it. It'll be inconsistent, uneven. As soon as you flip it over to DC electrode negative, it's going to smooth out. You're also going to need a pair of side snips or hognose pliers. Cut your wire off on the end there. Keep it nice and short. I don't know if you can see how far that's sticking out. About 1/4 inch, and that's ballpark of where I keep it while I'm welding. Alright, so you can hear the fan on the welder running in the background, maybe. So the first weld is going to be just a simple butt weld, and I didn't bevel this or anything like that. Hit it with spatter spray. We're going to set that one off to the side. Tack this on the end. Tack it in the corner there to hold this dude still. Well, hopefully that shows up good on camera. We're able to see what that weld looks like, or what that welding looks like. Let these guys cool down just a little bit, just a tad. I'll go to clean them up. Before I clean them up, let's zoom in on both of them and have a look, see what they look like before I do anything to them. Alright, I can already tell that this is a lot cleaner than had I not used the spatter spray, because there's no spatter all over it, no little weld BB stuck all over it. But you can see that slag that's over that weld. So I'll get that knocked off with the wire wheel here in just a second and get some better lighting on it, and we'll see what that one looks like. And same thing with that one. No spatter, no BBs. Nice and clean and smooth. We'll get that slag knocked off and wire wheeled off, and we'll see what it looks like. Alright, for safety reasons, I went ahead and put it in the vise. Wire wheel this off. Alright, it's the T-weld, the 90-degree weld. Laying nice and flat, smooth, looking really good. And here's the butt weld, looking pretty good, not real high, real smooth. And excuse my shaky hands on it. You can see up here at the end, that's where I did my spot weld on the tack weld on the two ends to hold the coupon in place. Alright, this is the vertical weld. This spot right here was from a tack weld that I done earlier. It's really good, it's really nice and smooth and flat. I do have some spots right here where it's a little inconsistent. Now, I was weaving this back and forth, unlike whenever I do horizontal welds. I do weave my vertical welds quite a bit. But I also haven't done a whole lot of MIG welding in the last few years. But it looks pretty good. It's pretty smooth, nice and flat. Let's check out the outside corner weld that I did. Alright, this is the outside corner weld. It looks like I grinded it down, but I didn't. The wire wheel got a little heavy with it, so I apologize. I mean, it doesn't really even look like a weld, it looks like it's just a break, a 90-degree break. Alright, here's a couple pictures of those few welds that I did. I think they turned out really good. It's flux core wire, so you know it's got its own pros and cons. It's not name brand wire, and for the most part there's not much of a difference, but there can be a little bit of a difference. I think the welder did a really good job. It seems to weld really good. It's got a good consistent sound to the arc on it, and you know, only time will tell. And I'd like to see what it'll do on gas with some hard wire. Definitely going to get that set up at some point, but I'm for sure going to be putting this welder to using it quite a bit. In an upcoming video, I'm hoping to do a new welding cart. I've got the MIG, the TIG, and the plasma cutter that I've got to sit on something other than my DeWalt table saw. But back to the welder. For $179, holy cow, man, I am blown away by it so far. Definitely going to put it to a lot of use, and we'll see how it holds up, for the longevity. But I'm telling you, $179 for the quality of this, dude. Hey, if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Go check out the review videos on the Hitbox TIG welder and the HeroCut plasma cutter. I've got a couple videos coming up on those, some part 2s for them. I'm going to do some more lathe videos here pretty soon and some project videos. So, like I said, like and subscribe, stick around, check out the rest of what comes.